Good afternoon, patrons, and welcome to the June Patroncast, which I'm recording like several days inside June. So I've got time to render this and edit this and put this up. This could happen. This could genuinely happen. But I think I actually said literally in May's Patroncast, hey, this totally happened in May, and it didn't. It happened in June. But this could be the one. This could be the Patroncast that actually happens in June. I've got a nice, it's fairly early evening. I'm recording this I think it's about, it's 8 p.m. It's 8 p.m. UK time. So I've got time to record this and edit it and render it, and it'll all be lovely. I've got plenty of time. I think it's I don't know what date it is today. I think it's the 28th. This is the problem with being a YouTuber. When you're a YouTuber, when you work for yourself, and when you work from home, you basically work every day to some degree. Like I don't take weekends off. I basically will work pretty much every day. Like some days I'll work a little bit less than others, but for the most part I'll work every day. So I kind of lose track of days of the week and times of day and dates and stuff very, very easily. Your pattern just shifts to when you are, feeling most able and kind of best able to work. Luckily, Claire keeps me straight on that for the most part, because she goes out to work Monday to Friday. So I have a pretty good idea of where the weekend is for the most part, though sometimes I get a little bit lost, especially between Tuesday and Thursday. That does happen just a little bit. So yes, obviously let's move straight on to the big thing, which is various people asked, and I think it's worth talking about anyway. Brexit, obviously, the Britain has voted to leave the European Union. Technically, it's not actually happened yet, and it's not going to happen for 2 years absolute minimum, because there's various procedures. Like Britain has to tell the European Union formally it's going to happen. Then there's 2 years, and then even at the end of that 2 years, they can apply for an extension, which the EU can choose to give them, and may or may not do so. So it's actually happening is years away, but we've started to see some really, really big impacts straight away. It's been fun. Obviously, the biggest one personally immediately is, as many of you will know, Claire. Claire is French. Claire is, I've mentioned this before on Patroncast, but those of you who are new, Claire is my partner. Me and Claire have been dating for 8 years at this point. So obviously, it's very upsetting. It's very upsetting for us in that regard, because we've built a life together. We have done, and we continue to build a life together here in Britain. And for Claire, I think this whole process has been, it's been very, very, very sad. It's been very sad. I found it very, very frustrating. I found myself very angry about it too, because Claire was effectively disenfranchised from this process. European Union citizens who are resident in the UK were not allowed to vote, even if they'd been here for years and they'd paid their taxes and they'd never drawn any benefits and they'd never been involved in any crime or anything. If they'd been model citizens and they were the model people who'd come over here, brought high education, done a skilled job and paid taxes for years, even then they weren't allowed to vote on it. So Claire was completely disenfranchised. I think she found that more than a little bit frustrating. And I found it very frustrating too. Obviously, it's very sad to see some of the language and some of the arguments that have been used. Obviously, I do not, by the way, mean in any way to tar the entire Leave campaign with any one brush. I'm fully aware that there are many people who have examined the issues and come to a conclusion that for their priorities, Leave was the right thing. However, based on the incidents of reports that are being reported to the police, the Leave victory has emboldened racist attacks across the UK. And there has been an immediate uptick in kind of, verbal and physical hatred against foreigners across Britain, and European foreigners, of course, in particular in this case. And that's just, it's horrible. It's horrible when you build your life with someone who, it's horrible in general. It's an ugly, ugly thing that's always been very hidden and under the surface, but there in Britain. But it really feels like it's come under the surface, and obviously, you feel it more keenly when you're building your life with someone who's a European citizen, and I'm sure Claire feels it much more keenly too. So it's just been a very, it's just been a grim few days. It's been a very, very grim few days. I've been very unproductive. The reason you're going to see, by the way, a whole bunch of new end cards at the end of the videos. We've done the LA Noire and the Life is Strange one a bajillion times. So I've basically doubled the number of them that exist, and there's one for Duskers and SimCity 4 and Total War Warhammer and a whole bunch of one-off videos. All have them, and that was mainly because I just was not in the mood Because a job like this, like, it's not just a job where, like, if you're really hungover or unproductive or whatever, you can't just kind of go in and sit at your desk and, like, do some kind of basic work to keep going and just kind of work through it and be unproductive, but that's fine. You were there and that's fine because you did your job. Like, a job like this, you have to be in the right mood because, my job is to be kind of, it's like, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's to be, like, positive and happy and so forth. Like, my channel in particular, because, like, I think kind of we're very positive on Minitree. I think, like, Minitree is a very, very positive channel. Like, the kind of the British snarky, cynical, I hate everything thing was, like, a big thing on the internet when I started Minitree, and I thought, actually, you know what if I was happy? What if I kind of mainly did the games I liked? What if I mainly focused on games I actually enjoyed? And for the most part, if I thought I was going to hate a game, I didn't do it. Like, I'll do the odd thing that I think will be funny to do if it might be bad, like a really bad simulator or whatever. But overwhelmingly, I play games that I like, and if I play a game and it's really, like, bad and I don't enjoy it, for the most part, if the video would just be like a bit, well, this is awful, isn't it? Then, like, unless I can find a really funny angle for it just, like, I just delete the footage and you never see it. Like, Robot Arena 3, which if you follow NerdCube, I think he did a video on. I tried to make a video of that, but I just couldn't. 'Cause, like, after, like, an hour and a half, I just kind of felt like, I'm not enjoying this. I don't really get it. So I can't, like, I could just make a video, like, complaining about it and tearing it apart, but I didn't want to. So I just deleted the footage. And that video kind of will never exist. So, like, you have to be, like, happy and positive to do it. So, like, just because I was in a very kind of grim mood for a couple of days, I just basically just got on with stuff in the background. Like, I was making these new end cards. I've made a new channel trailer, which is vastly overdue, because, like, the existing one doesn't have any Fallout 4 in it, which is a pretty big oversight. So I've made a new one that's a bit longer and has, like, some of my favourite moments that have kind of existed since I made the old one. So the new channel trailer is going to be coming really soon as well, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, I just kind of got on with that. Like, in terms of, like, the impact of Brexit, like, some people are asking, like, what does it mean? Well, I think that's kind of the problem, which is no one really knows what it means. No one has any bloody clue what it means. Like, we've lost our Prime Minister, and no one knows who the next Prime Minister is going to be. We've near as damn it lost the leader of the opposition, though he's hanging on for the moment, that's Jeremy Corbyn. And we don't know if he's going to be the leader of the opposition anymore. There may or may not be a general election to decide the government later this year, because generally, like, if there's a change of Prime Minister, they very often choose to call a snap election straight over, so they've got a mandate to govern, because otherwise they're, like, governing without a mandate, which can be a really big problem and cause trouble down the line. Scotland may or may not ask for another independence referendum, or even if they don't ask, they might just have one anyway. Northern Ireland, may or may not go and join Ireland. And we may or may not have a good relationship with the EU, or maybe we may have a bad relationship with the EU. There's, like, loads of questions where we don't know what the answer is yet, and so many things that people can't ask. Like, I've asked my accountant, and, like, I've spoken to Google, like, saying, like, if Britain leaves the EU, what does that mean for us? Because, like, basically my entire income comes from two sources. It comes from Patreon and it comes from Google. And Patreon pays me from America, and Google pays me from Ireland, from ERA, so from within the EU. So does it make any difference? And they're like, we don't think so, but equally we're not sure, because no country's ever withdrawn from the EU before, so we're not actually sure what happens next. So the danger isn't really, like, I can't point at one thing and say, this is where the danger lies. I can point at, like, a big thing and say, you know what, we've basically no bloody clue what's going to happen, or who's going to be doing it, or on what basis or authority or mandate they're going to be trying to do it for the next few years. So we just don't know. And, like, Claire and I have already, like, had the big discussion about this, which is basically saying, like, we'll probably give it a few years for the dust to settle, but, like, if the UK ends up a much smaller, broken, impoverished, and potentially, depending on culturally where we go from this point, from what I was saying earlier, a much nastier, more close-minded country than the one that I know and, I like living here, then we'll consider moving. We will consider leaving the UK or whatever's left of it, and whether that means going to, I think kind of we will probably stay in the Anglosphere, whether that would mean moving both myself and the business that's behind Minitree, which for you doesn't make any difference whatsoever. Like, the channel will look exactly the same no matter where the business is registered. But right now, like, I'm resident in the UK, so the business behind Minitree Nerd is registered in the UK, because that's the proper thing to do. If you live in a country and you're kind of working in a country, then your business ought to be registered in that country, even if that means I pay higher taxes than I technically would have to if I, founded the business abroad somewhere, if I put it in a tax haven or whatever, because it's the right thing to do to pay taxes in the country where you live. That's the price for civilization, for roads and firefighters and good things. That's the British. Well, that's my perspective at least, not really necessarily the British perspective, but it's my perspective at the bare minimum. So, it would not be too difficult for me to potentially move to a different bit of the Anglosphere, because, technically, if I phrase it in the way governments look at it, I'm a self-employed business owner who has a profitable business. And for the most part, it's easier for people like that to move than it is for someone who, say, is filling a job in a different country or doesn't have a job yet and just wants to move to a different country. So, we could go to Ireland. We might go to Scotland if it's independent and it looks like they're actually doing well. We could go to Canada. That's a bit of a further away option. The reason I vaguely mentioned that one is one of the questions that got asked in the comments for the submission thread this year was I mentioned when I was talking about leaving Remain before the referendum that I was a second generation immigrant. I am. I know I sound very British, and I am British. I was born in Britain and hold a British passport, and both my parents were British citizens at that point. But my mother was not born British. She is a naturalised citizen. My mother is Canadian. And my entire mother's side of the family comes from Canada. In fact, I've still got a huge amount of family over in Canada, dotted around. Most of them are around Ontario. There's quite a few around Toronto. In particular, and I think a few of them are dotted around close to Vancouver. I don't think I've really got much family outside of the Ontario and then Vancouver areas. To be honest, I think there might be a few dotted around, but the ones I know are mostly around that area. So, but I've kind of looked into it, and actually having extended family in Canada doesn't seem to make it much easier to emigrate out to Canada. But I think we'd probably be able to be honest. So. That's a few years down the line, so that doesn't affect you in the slightest. And even if it did happen, it wouldn't affect you in the slightest. But, it's sad. It's just one of those sad things that, basically I think we as a country were on a perfectly good thing. I liked living here. I'm not a patriotic person. I don't kind of say, I love my country, or I love the Queen and country, or da-da-da-da. When I say I like Britain, what I mean really is things as basic and humdrum and day-to-day as, when I go down the street, I like the selection of shops that are available to me, and I like the particular shops, and I like Marks and Spencer's existing, for example. I like the different kind of variety of restaurants, and I like the local cuisine, and I like certain kind of minutiae of our culture and stuff like that. I like the tendency of the fact that two people who come vaguely close to each other in Britain will both apologise to each other if there's a theoretical chance they might have just slightly got in each other's way, even if they didn't actually get in each other's way. There's just little things I like, but I'm not patriotic in the slightest. So to leave it all behind would not be particularly difficult for me, and Claire isn't British at all. So for her, I imagine, especially if Britain does go the way I kind of suggest as something I fear it might, then maybe she'd be up for it's a very long way in the future. In the short term, there might be some benefit from it for us, and in the real short term, because the thing is, as you've probably noticed if you look at the Patreon page, that's all in US dollars. Everything in Patreon it's in America, it's all in US dollars. Now the pound has crashed, so as a result, when Patreon pays me each month in dollars, the dollars it's paying me, if they stay the same, will therefore buy more pounds. So I'll get a slight kind of pay rise out of Patreon off the same amount of US dollars, which is really, really good. Google's a bit more confusing. Google technically pays in US dollars, but Google is only paying me as much as the ads are worth. So as a result of because of what Britain has done, and Britain has not just kind of messed up Britain has also caused trouble in the financial markets all across the world. We've really screwed up the world economy a little bit there, potentially. So sorry if your country's been slightly screwed up by our activities. I voted Remain. I not only voted Remain, I ranted at length on Twitter before the referendum begging people to vote Remain. It's not my fault if your country's just been screwed up by this vote. But as a result, the ads that Google is selling around the world are probably going to be worth a little bit less. So the price will fall. So I'll probably be paid by Google a smaller number of dollars that will be worth slightly more. So I don't know how that's going to work out in the end. So, like, it's possible in terms of, like, the amount of money I'm actually paid, it might go ever so slightly up, at least in the short term. Now, the problem is, because the pound's so devalued and Britain trades a lot with the world because we're nowhere near self-sufficient, prices are going to go up in the shops, and the government's kind of suggested that taxes might have to go up too. So, I might get paid a bit more, but I don't know if that's going to be enough to offset the fact that prices and taxes are gonna go up. So, like, basically, I've no bloody clue how it works out. Like, it shouldn't impoverish me much, because even if we take a hit in terms of, like, the state of the British economy, it's kind of offset by the fact that most people are going to be hit by, like, price rises and tax increases, but, like, their wages aren't going to change at all. Whereas my wages, because they're in US dollars, I get paid the exact same amount, but that US dollars happens to buy more pounds at the moment. So it will feel like I'm getting a pay rise, even though I'm not. I'm actually being paid the same amount. It's just that everyone else in the country has screwed up. So basically what I'm saying is the entirety of Great Britain revolves around me, or at least actually that's the technically correct way to view it. Never mind. You know what? Let's leave on. Like, someone asked me about, like, what the long-term picture is. Like, we don't know. That's the thing. We've no bloody clue what the long-term picture is. So, like, Clara and I have said, like, you know, we're not going to take any rash action. We're just going to let the dust settle for 2 to 3 years, and then we'll just see. We'll see what happens. Anyway, let's move on to happier things. Let's move on to happier things, because Brexit makes me sad. It genuinely does. Speedrunning. Someone suggested I should do some speedrunning. I'm terrible at speedrunning. The thing is, like, you've seen me do, like, well, you've very rarely seen me do kind of like Twitch gaming. Like, when I'm good at games, it's not because of my reaction speed. My reaction speed's not, like, desperately fantastic. I'm not good at making, like, decisions on the fly. I get flustered, and I don't like really, really rapid games where there's lots of stuff going on, and I actually have to kind of really calculate a lot of fast-moving variables in real time. Like, this is actually the reason why I think my personal favourite Smash Brothers games was Smash Brothers 64, because it was a bit slower and more tactical and floaty, and it feels to me like everything from Melee onwards was a bit kind of faster within. I really didn't like the air dodging. I never enjoyed air dodging. I thought it was a shame that air dodging was added in. I was happier when dodging was just on the ground, and when you were in the air, you had to kind of navigate around with the double jump in your moves. I thought that was much better, but never mind. Anyway, yes, I'm terrible at speedrunning. Like, I think I have, like, you know, the best videos I make, and when I'm kind of best at games, like, I'm best at games when they involve, like, strategic thought, and I can come up with long, complicated series of kind of things to do, and I can come up with, like, strategies for making multiple complex systems work together to my advantage when I can figure out what the mechanisms behind the game are. I quite like doing that, and I feel like I'm best when I'm doing that. And when I put together my best videos, they're because, like, it's actually quite a lot of footage edited down to a really tightly focused video. So yeah, speedrunning, I don't think I'd be very good. In fact, I know I'm kind of terrible at it, because, like, occasionally I give it a go, and whenever I do, it doesn't end well. Mountain Blade Warband, someone's just, actually, yes, it's in the Steam sale, and I actually asked on Twitter which should I start with if I wanted to give the franchise a go, Mountain Blade or Warband, which is my understanding is like a standalone. Is it a standalone sequel or expansion? I don't know. Anyway, someone said, like, pretty much 99% of people, in fact, said go with Warband. So I will buy Warband in the Steam sale. I don't have a timescale, but you will see that. Mass Effect 2 came up as usual. I will say, I'm not going to say we're going to do Mass Effect 2 soon, because that's a maybe, but we are closer to doing Mass Effect 2 than we ever have before. And I know technically that's always true, because that's how time works, but I actually I have been thinking about it. I can't think of a really good rule set that doesn't just make it limited and more boring. So if you try and, like, say, do powers only or guns only, you're just making the game more boring, because, like, you're basically just making it a lot slower and more repetitive. So I'm kind of thinking I might just do, like, a Mass Effect 2 Insanity run or something. I kind of feel like a Mass Effect 2 Insanity run might be fun, because, like, I really love Mass Effect 2. And I realised, like, I don't always have to do, like, a challenge run for everything. Like, just, like, a really difficult run might be fine, because, like, say the New Vegas Survival Series it's kind of a challenge run, but really it's just, like, a difficult run through a game I love, and people are responding really well to that. So I kind of feel like Mass Effect 2 Insanity might actually happen sooner than I was originally planning. So watch this space. Apparently I've been mispronouncing what I've been calling him Wanlong in Fallout 4. The chappie who is in Sanctuary Hills in Fallout 4. I thought his name was pronounced Wan. I'm sorry, apparently I've been getting that wrong. Is it pronounced Jun? I honestly don't know. If someone tell me who actually knows, I'm not going to try saying his name any more times because apparently I'm accidentally being racist. So just like someone tell me how to pronounce his name in the comments under this video or the comments on Patreon, because I don't want to keep doing that. I didn't mean to do that. I'm very, very sorry if I did. Fallout 4 Survival Mode, how do I feel about it? I love it. I absolutely love it. Like, I was already pretty sold on Fallout 4, but Survival Mode was what really kind of pushed me over the edge into absolutely loving it. I think it's like probably been like the best like new addition as a mode into like Fallout as a franchise since it went 3D. Like, I love it more than like way more than hardcore mode in Fallout New Vegas, which I think is actually much improved by the Jay Sawyer mod, but even then is like in some ways more of like an inconvenience than anything else. I think genuinely Fallout 4 Survival Mode is brilliant. If anything, like, I'm going to struggle to go back. Like, I was recording No Guns at the same time as Survival, which wasn't originally supposed to happen. I was kind of planning to finish up No Guns at about the time Survival started, and one would flow into the other. But then that didn't really work out because Survival came out way earlier than I was originally anticipating. And having been playing, like, through Survival Mode now, I really think I'm going to struggle to go back to, like, anything that's not Survival Mode, unless I'm just kind of playing for my own entertainment. Because, like, I really like what it imposes. I really like the fact it makes you think so much harder about journeys you undertake and how you do it, how it makes you like appreciate things in the world like vertebrates and just like, you know, random shacks and sources of clean water. I love it. It just adds so much for me. I think it's absolutely fantastic. I think the same person had a follow-up question about whether I wanted more difficulty. Actually, I kind of do. I'm kind of hoping, because I think if I recall correctly, it wasn't until Skyrim's final DLC, Dragonborn, that they introduced the legendary difficulty, if I recall correctly. I think that wasn't in the game before that point. It wasn't introduced in, like, Half-Fire or... what was the other one? The Werewolf and Vampire one, which I've forgotten. Dawnguard, that was it. It wasn't in that. They introduced the legendary difficulty during the final DLC. So I'm kind of hoping Bethesda will again introduce a new higher difficulty, like legendary survival or something, at the point when they release Nuka World. I'm really kind of hoping they will, in fact, because I actually really want like an ultimate challenge yet. Because like survival's really, really fun, and it's really, really good for role playing, and it's very, very difficult at times. But like, even then, like, I think it's manageable once you really understand the game. And I don't say I perfectly understand the game yet. People still correct me on little things in the comments. But I think I'm starting to feel I understand how all the moving cogs fit together behind the scenes in Fallout 4. I feel like I'm starting to know that game pretty damn well. So I really want, like, one final level of ultimate challenge to throw myself against yet. Because, yeah, I feel like Survival Mode, it's not easy, but, like, at times I would like it to be even more challenging. So, yeah, I'd like even more hyper amazing survival mode, please. Someone asked me about the Fallout 4 DLC. Interesting question about, like, now we know there's only going to be, like, 6 pieces and Nuka World is going to be the final one. Like, I think that's really interesting. Like, it's not too surprising in some ways. It was always possible they were going to go for the Skyrim model, which they broadly have, where there was, like, small bits of settlement-based stuff or building-based stuff, just like Half-Fire was, and then, like, you know, 2 big bits of new DLC. And, like, some of them are really big bits. Like, Dragonborn was a really big bit of DLC for Skyrim. So it's not too surprising they've kind of gone down a similar route. I personally agree with a lot of people, which is I would have preferred a large number of small experiments. But I think, like, in some ways, like, maybe we've been a bit harsh. Like, if you look at how much new material Automatron adds into the game, like, even in terms of new areas, like, Automatron adds 2 really big, well put together dungeons into the game. Now, if you just consider how much actual kind of gameplay and how many new areas were added into Fallout 3 by the pit, say, like, literally just in terms of, like, you know, the number of square meters, the pit is very, very small. And technically very, very short. The pit is excellent because of its script and storied atmosphere, which I think Automatron mostly lacks. Though Automatron does have some fantastic atmosphere in its final dungeon, where you kind of get, for the first time, the real horrendous, horrific horror. That's, I think all those words have the same root. Marvellous. Well done. Horrendous, horrific horror. Well bloody done, John. Yeah, the horrendous, horrific horror of brains being cut out for the RoboBrain program, which is really, really well done. It's beautifully well done. So I think kind of maybe people, like, are a bit mean to Automatron. I think, like, you know, it adds quite a lot of space in. People just, like, if you just literally taken those dungeons from Automatron, or the square footage equivalent to them, and just moved it slightly off map, and just put it in, you know, Robot Land, the robot repair bay that's, just outside the Commonwealth or something, I think people would have actually been much better inclined towards Automatron entirely. So, yeah, I think maybe we've judged that a little bit harshly. I do agree that I would have preferred like a large number of small experiments than 2 really big separate land DLC things. And I anticipate Nuka World will be as big or bigger than Far Harbor was. But that's just kind of my view on it. But yeah, I agree. I would have liked it a little bit better. One thing that, however, I do think comes out of it that's very, very good is if they're going to be done with Fallout 4 DLC come August, then to my mind, especially as we know for a fact, obviously, they kind of want to move on to the next Elder Scrolls game next, but my understanding is, like, at the moment that's not in development yet. That is the next project, but it's not even being developed. That's going to be taking their time for a long time, which, to my mind, significantly increases the possibility that they might farm Fallout out to another studio again. Now, I would love it to be Obsidian, or for those people who were involved with New Vegas who have since left Obsidian, I would love it if they just kind of brought together a team of people just to do that in, a separate little wing of people set aside in Bethesda. I don't know. I don't care. Like, I just would really like to think that there is a much stronger possibility that they might farm it out to someone who will make something much more like New Vegas 2 as a result of them being done with it, than if they were going to keep releasing DLC for the next year. And arguably, am I willing to trade away, a little bit more DLC made by Bethesda for the possibility that, they might be willing to farm it out to someone who's going to make New Vegas 2? I probably think I am. On reflection, actually, I probably think I am. On the downside, I'm kind of struggling to see how Nuka World's going to be a proper finale, because, it doesn't feel like it's been built up to properly. Like, say, for Fallout 3, you had Broken Steel. Technically, Broken Steel didn't come out last. Mothership Zeta did. But let's just pretend Mothership Zeta never happened. But Broken Steel gave Fallout 3 a proper big ending. It was arguably not the best DLC pack for Fallout 3. In fact, I'd say barely anyone would say it was the best DLC pack for Fallout 3. But it gave a proper ending to things. And you understood where it came in. It came in, as a direct consequence out of the end of Fallout 3's main story. It felt like a proper ending. And Fallout New Vegas, all of the DLC were clearly building up to the Divide, to Ulysses. It was all clearly being led up to that. And however you feel about Lonesome Road, I personally feel Lonesome Road is not perfect, but a really, really good, interesting, fun bit of storytelling. Like, Fallout New Vegas, again, felt like it had a proper ending there, though it still bugs me to this day that because Fallout New Vegas didn't have a post-endgame, you ended up in a situation where everyone in the DLC was talking about, especially in, the end cards. Like, the end cards at the end of Old World Blues and Lonesome Road are about how, and now the courier had to go to the dam, and that was so big, and it was like, I've done the dam. The dam's nothing. There's 8 guys shooting 8 other guys. And then I go up to Lanius and I pass a speech 100 check with him, and then he runs off and we're done. The dam's really underwhelming next to what's in the TLC. But because there's no post game, the dam has always got to be canonically yet to come. So they kind of everyone keeps talking about how important the dam is, even though the dam's actually a relatively small scale battle, all things considered. But never mind. But it was nice that Lonesome Road gave it a feeling of conclusion. But I can't say for certain that New World won't give it that feeling of conclusion, because DLCs that don't look like they ought to be conclusive and final can surprise you. A lot of people who were upset with Mass Effect 3 and walked away from it after they played the ending of Mass Effect 3, I think really missed out. Because Citadel is the best possible ending to Mass Effect 3. Even though it sits canonically before the ending of Mass Effect 3, it is the perfect ending to the franchise. It's sweet and poignant and emotional and funny and heartfelt, and it's wonderful. Citadel DLC for Mass Effect 3. If you've never played, if you loved the Mass Effect franchise, but you felt disappointed by the ending by 3, and you've never actually played Citadel, go and play Citadel, because it's wonderful. It's just wonderful, and it's so funny, and it's just it's cheesy as hell as well, but it just works. It just works absolutely perfectly. So maybe Nuka World will surprise us and be like that. I'd like to think so. What is my dream car? Someone asked. Well, actually, I've already had my dream car, because I'm not actually much of a gearhead, so really I just want a car that basically works and is nice to drive, and for that reason I've already had that. I had my beautiful Toyota Corolla, a V-Reg Toyota Corolla. Oh, it was beautiful. It was small, and it was nippy, and it fit into tight spaces, and it was very responsive. It was very fuel efficient. If I ever kind of slightly bumped it, the parts for it were incredibly cheap because they were mass produced. Oh, it was beautiful. It was beautiful. I sold it. I sold it years and years and years ago for like a few £100s, actually. It was very, very cheap. I might well get another one. I might well get like another little kind of just like a crappy little Toyota. There just kind of wasn't much point me having it in London because, like, you know, it costs a ton to insure it and to park it and to tax it and the fuel. And I was barely getting any use out of it because London has like such an amazing public transportation network, and the trains and the tube and everything run really, really well and all the time. And they're not cheap, but they are affordable. And like, I just wasn't getting use out of a car. And like, even things like you used to use a car for, like going on the weekly shop, like, you know, now every supermarket delivers. There wasn't even any point doing that anymore. So I just kind of got rid of it years ago because like it was just sitting outside and gathering dust. But I would, you know, I don't think like, even if I became like super rich, I would never buy like a stupid sports car or anything. I would just buy like a nice, lovely, efficient, easy to drive little nippy car again. Am I really as much of a bad cook as it appears in my cooking videos? Well, one, if you watch my cooking videos, you'd be very clearly aware I am not a bad cook because, for example, the cake in year 1 was edible-ish, and the baked Alaska in year 2 actually worked. The French onion soup was actually quite tasty, and even though it was slightly burnt, the peanut butter brownies were perfectly edible, and me and Claire ate all of them. And the little kind of sausages and Yorkshire puddings actually worked as well. It's like everything I've ever made, nothing's ever turned into an inedible mess. It's just my method for getting to it is a little bit chaotic. But am I actually as chaotic and disorganised and generally like as clueless in the kitchen as I appear? Yes. Yes, that's not an act. That's actually true. And the follow-up question was, why hasn't Claire beaten that out of me yet and kind of forced me to not be such an idiot? The thing is, Claire really hates washing up. She hates washing up more than any other chore. She absolutely despises it. So we just have a deal, which is she does the cooking and I do all of the washing up. And I wipe down the surfaces and I make sure everything's clean and put away for her. So she's got a nice clean kitchen and fresh dishes and fresh pans and everything whenever she wants to cook something. So she can just kind of go in, get clean things and immediately start cooking, then just shove them on the side, walk away and eat the food with me. And then afterward, I can just wash all the dishes and everything and clean the kitchen for her. And we're both really happy with this arrangement, so it works perfectly. VR, 2 questions that kind of came out of the Vive video. One, what do I think is going to be the impact of VR on the gaming industry going forward? I think it's going to be very, very marginal for now. I think, like I've kind of said, I think like over the next like 3 to 5 years, we will probably see a lot of innovations in VR, but we also need to factor in we're really seeing the damn baby steps right now. Like, people are still struggling to figure out how do we handle movement in VR? How do we handle complexity in the sense that people are used to games having some degree of complexity, whereas right now basically holding 2 things that have like limited buttons on them, like it's really hard to map controls onto them. I'm going to actually do a video on this specifically because the Solus project has VR support for the Vive, and it's a really good example of one, kind of how promising the technology is, but also simultaneously what kind of glaring limitations need to be overcome yet. And I'll kind of go into those in the video, but basically it kind of boils down to the fact that like stuff we take for granted in games today, like, you know, having a controller or a keyboard where you've got a lot of keys available to you and thus you can have quite complex series of controls and hotkeys and something. If you take that away and you take the ability to move without causing nausea or motion sickness in a lot of people, and I never suffered from nausea or motion sickness in like, you know, decades of gaming. But even then, like the moment in a VR game when it's filling up your peripheral vision, when you're standing still but you're holding a button and your character's moving forward, and that's your eyes and your brain are away, you're moving forward but your legs aren't moving forward, like immediately everything goes to migraine hell. It's terrible. And I've spoken to so many people who are exactly the same. Never suffer from motion sickness or nausea from gaming. But VR, movement controls just do not work unless you're doing blink teleportation. And my understanding is Fallout 4 VR is going in that direction, and I think it has to. There's just no alternative. Someone also asked whether they thought like the Vive is worth buying. If you like being an early adopter and you are an affluent person with a pile of money that you really shouldn't be using to pay down your debts or whatever, sure, why not? However, if you're just saying, do I think it currently represents good value for the amount of money you have to spend versus the amount of playtime you get out of it, no, I'd probably say hold off for the moment at least, because the number of games on it is currently fairly slim, and quite a few of the games that are on it are kind of currently like still working out some of the kinks. So the number of good games on it is really, really limited. And the number of games that are good on it are generally very small scale games, like Job Simulator is an amazing experience and well worth experiencing, but the replay value is effectively zero. Maybe you'll do each job twice to see if you've kind of missed something, to find out what would happen if you like did things the other way, if there's two options or something. But other than that, like, there's basically zero replayability, and there's a lot of like games which are good, and like basically the good VR games are the ones that stay tight and focused. The big sprawling games that try new traditional gaming stuff, like the Solos project, generally don't work so well. Whereas the games that keep things tightly focused, like Job Simulator or Tilt Brush, work really well, but necessarily kind of they don't always have like the replayability. Tilt Brush kind of does. Like Tilt Brush, I think like if you are that way inclined, you like if you are like really excited by the prospect of like painting or 3D sculpting with all these magical brushes in the air, like potentially like for some people I think the price of the Vive is worth it just for Tilt Brush, because Tilt Brush for the right person is just incredible, I understand. And like I think like there'll just eventually just be enough games which are just for one person so infinitely replayable that the Vive is worth it just for that. But for the moment, I'd say for most gamers, hold off, let this industry work through the kinks first. There's a lot of work yet to be done, and I think the price will come down by the time we've worked out those kinks. Fallout Equestria, someone asked me about. I am aware of it. I'm aware it exists, but I'm not into My Little Pony. I've never watched an episode of it, and honestly, I don't really kind of have any inclination towards watching at least like one series, potentially multiple series of that to get enough into the lore to understand where Fallout Equestria is coming from. Like, if you're into My Little Pony and you're into Fallout, and Fallout Equestria brings you joy, more power to you. I've probably, during my life, been into weirder fandom than that, if you like. But, like, it's not something I'm going to go out of my way to try and actively get into if you're not already. So, sorry about that. I mean, I heard there was a game. In fact, actually, interestingly, the people who were developing some form of, like, open world Fallout Equestria game of some description actually approached me and wanted me to kind of try out the demo, and I kind of had to politely tell them I couldn't, because it's a fan game that's got Fallout in the title that isn't licensed by Bethesda, and it's also a fan game that's like using assets and characters and ideas from My Little Pony, and they don't have permission from the owners of that license. So like you're messing with two license holders. Like, as a YouTuber, I cannot make a video of something that has basically got two licenses in it where neither of the licenses are actually being used with the permission of the license holders. That's just like putting my channel at risk. How big is my emergency backlog of videos that are like prepared? Videos that are prepared as in like I've made them and they're rendered and they're sitting on my computer but not uploaded to YouTube. It's currently sitting at 24. I checked that just before I recorded this. So there are 24 videos I've recorded that are just sitting on my computer that could be uploaded any time. In terms of like the backlog of videos that are already uploaded to YouTube, ready to go over the next few days, that's just 3. I just stay a few days ahead on that. So like if something goes wrong, I can just bring a different video up to a different day instead, which is exactly what happened this last week with Fallout 4 Survival and Fallout New Vegas Survival getting swapped around on Sunday and Monday. Just one wasn't quite ready and there were some slight issues with it, so as a result I just swapped them around because I already had Monday's video ready to go, so it just went out on Sunday instead. Happens all the time. But yeah, the number of videos that have actually been prepared but not uploaded is 24. In YouTube, are there kind of big moments where the amount of effort you put into a video kind of doesn't really reflect the number of views it gets? Yes, happens all the time on occasion. You just cannot predict what's going to happen. Like, how to make a cup of tea. How to make a cup of tea and Prison Architect videos are some of the most watched stuff on the channel. Why? Because by sheer coincidence and like, well, not sheer coincidence, like I optimize my videos quite well to rank relatively well, but there is the small problem of just occasionally a video will just rank really well on a term that like people keep searching for over time, and that video will just get loads of views as time goes on. Like Hitman, you may recall I did a Hitman Sniper Challenge video just before I think it was just before the new Hitman game came out, actually, just like to celebrate the fact that the new Hitman game was about to arrive. I did Hitman Sniper Challenge, and I believe that now ranks really high for Hitman Sniper Challenge, because it's got like 90,000 views, and like a normal video, even if it goes pretty well, that doesn't rank desperately well, will get like maybe 30 to 40,000 views. That's got 91,000 views, I think, at the moment. So that just ranks really well on a Hitman Sniper Challenge. So for whatever reason, when people search Hitman Sniper Challenge, my video comes up. So it gets lots of views there. Same thing happened to Prison Architects, and actually my video How to Make a Cup of Tea, which was a joke I just made 'cause I was bored one afternoon, I think actually ranks like, I don't know if it's #1 in the world, but it's really high in the world. For if you search on YouTube, How to Make a Cup of Tea, my joke video about summoning our Dork Lord Alhazared by stirring the tea in the correct direction and then slaughtering a goat genuinely ranks really, really high. And it gets a lot of dislikes and angry comments from people saying like, why would you do this? I was looking for a real guide on how to make tea. It's like, well, one, sorry, and two, how do you need a video guide to make a cup of tea? How complicated is this process? So sometimes videos that like I'll put together very, very quickly just kind of go crazy successful. Like 60 seconds goes way better than I ever expected to, and I don't know why people always like watching 60 seconds, but for some reason everyone always watches the 60-second videos. They do really, really well. Whereas some videos that you put a lot of work into just flop. And videos that you just kind of look and think this ought to do well based on stuff that has done well in the past don't do well at all. The big one I think was Avery Attorney. So like a visual novel with lots of fun voice work where I kind of, I brought Claire in to do a ridiculous French accent and I got to totally play around with ridiculous British accents, and it was silly and it had a fun sense of humour. It had some gameplay under it. I thought it was going to go really, really well. And then like nobody cared. Like the first episode was like watched I think like slightly under an average amount. Then the second part like it dropped like a stone, like over half the viewers dropped out. So it's like, oh, I was kind of planning to make this into a full series, but that's literally nobody cares. Well, not literally nobody. Like, still like 10,000 people watched it, but that's so low. It was just like, this is not entertaining so many people. My time would be better spent producing something that entertains more people. So I just kind of dropped it. And that can just happen. It's part of being a YouTuber. Like, a good YouTuber has good instincts of figuring out what's likely to work and what's likely to not, but even then, sometimes you'll make mistakes. So, and that was one of them. I thought that was going to go well and it didn't go well. But for the most part, when I put a ton of effort into a video and it doesn't really live up to the amount of effort I put in, I kind of knew that was going to happen because sometimes if I come up with an idea for a video, I'll just do it anyway, even if it doesn't kind of, I know it's not going to kind of pay for itself. Like the April Fool's video this year where there was Skyrim and there was Medieval 2 Total War and there was Pokemon Blue. That took like 2 full days or something to make, and I knew that was going to get quite a few views, but not spectacular numbers, and so it was. It just was a slightly above average video, but it took 2 days to make rather than half a day. So that wasn't unexpected. I knew that was going to happen, and I like doing a special video for April Fool, so that's absolutely fine. But on the other hand, sometimes you put in loads of effort and a video goes spectacularly well. Fallout New Vegas Choose Your Own Apocalypse took me 3 or 4 full days to make, and then that got 2.5-3 million views just in that series, which was spectacular. And interestingly, even though it got 3 million views just on that series in the first few days, and normally I get 3 million views across an entire month, I didn't get paid any more that day because I disabled all but the crappy little banner ads on all but the first video, because I thought it'd be a really bad experience if you were clicking with videos that were only 30 seconds long and you ran into an unskippable video ad, or even to run into a skippable video ad, being interrupted 5 seconds every 30 seconds would be really annoying. So I disabled all of them, and then I realised at the end, even though this got 3 million views, because the only ads that were showing were the terrible little banner ads that are worth nothing, I got paid slightly less than usual, even though I managed to get double the views that month normal. So that was good. That was great fun. But that's fine. It brought a load of new people into the channel and it went really well in the press and loads of people loved it, and that's the important thing. Someone asked me what the plans are for Twitch and am I a Twitch partner yet? Interesting thing, which is right now in my inbox, I actually have a contract from Twitch that's awaiting my signature to become a partner, because I did the Fallout 4 live stream basically to prove to Twitch I could bring in the numbers, so they'd make me a partner offer, even though I'd never really done streaming before on Twitch. And they sent me that, and that was all fine. And then I've not been signing it, because I've been hearing from more and more people actually, Twitch is getting harder and harder to work with, they're taking a bigger cut out of things and they're kind of adding all sorts of restrictions, and they're just becoming more and more difficult to work with, and the amount that people get paid for being on Twitch has become, even for fairly big kind of Twitch people, is becoming really, really unfeasibly low. And meanwhile, Google is finally sorting out its act, and its live streaming process is much, much better in a lot of ways. It's much easier to control. You can basically kind of put out your existing subscriber base without having to move them all over onto Twitch, which is actually kind of good. The bit rate that you're allowed to send to YouTube's live gaming thing is way higher than Twitch. Twitch kind of caps out, and if you go over a certain level that's actually pretty low, then Twitch kind of declares that you're DDoSing them and actually kind of bans you from everything for a bit, which is kind of annoying. Whereas YouTube can really take a much higher bit rate being kind of uploaded to it, so you can actually have high quality stuff. It just feels like YouTube's much, much better. So I'm kind of thinking of doing pretty darn soon, actually. I'm not willing to say a date yet, because if I tell you a date then I break it, you'll just be disappointed. But pretty darn soon, I'm actually planning to do like a fairly long, like a day-long live event on YouTube, just to kind of see how it does, and do people enjoy it? Do people like coming and hanging out for like, even if they're only kind of dipping in and out for an hour or two at a time or something, do people like having me just around for a day that they can kind of come and just kind of chat with me and watch me play something pretty casually? So I'm going to see how that does soon, and we'll see if that does any better. But I don't know, Twitch might be on hold in favour of YouTube's own streaming platform, because Twitch just seems to be harder and harder to work with. What's my favourite British comedy? I think I might have answered this one before, but just in case I haven't, I really love the work of Chris Morris. The Day to Day, which was like a spoof current affairs programme, and Brass Eye, which was basically the same thing. I know for a fact the whole of the Day to Day is on YouTube if you just search for it. The Brass Eye, I imagine, is the same if you just search for Brass Eye, but I can't confirm that for certain. If I had to choose between having scales or fur, which would I go for? Well, fur. I'd say it's got to be fur. Because the thing is, if you had to have scales or fur, I think people will make like subconscious judgments about you based on one or the other. So like, if you have scales, people will think you kind of look like a lizard or a snake. And those are things that people kind of think are bad. They're kind of bad, untrustworthy, dangerous creatures. I think people would be nervous around you. Whereas if you've got like fur, as long as you kind of kept it nice and well groomed and fluffy, people would like associate you with like, you know, dogs and cats and happy things, animals they like, so therefore people would be more kind of well inclined towards you. So I think you'd definitely be better off with fur than scales. If I had to go on a date with Boris Johnson or Michael Gove, which would I go for? Oh God, am I allowed to poison them? Because if I'm allowed to poison them during this date, if I can just like slip something in their drink while they're actually out of the bathroom, that would potentially make a difference. I'd probably have to say Boris Johnson, because the man does know a lot about classics, so at least like if we could just like not talk about politics and instead we could just talk about classics and like, you know, ancient theatre or whatever, that might be interesting. So I'm going to say Boris Johnson there. Old Fallout 1 and Fallout 2, when will that happen? Current plan is I think we'll probably do Fallout 1 in the Sunday slot after Fallout New Vegas survival mode is done. Once we're done with the J Sawyer mod, I think current plan is we'll do Fallout 1. That's not for absolute certain, but that's just what I'm thinking right now. EGX this year. EGX in, I think it's still in September. The big EGX, the one that happens in the NEC. Am I going to be there again? Yes. In fact, I've already got my press pass sorted out for that this year. I haven't decided what day I'm going to go. Someone was asking also if I like was thinking of doing like a meetup. It feels really small. Our channel feels very small, in fact, to be doing a meetup for only like 200,000. And not 200,000 technically. Because you may notice if you look at YouTube, right now, YouTube's having a problem right now where it just like kicked huge numbers of subs off loads of channels, and I assume they were just doing a sub purge for like dead, old, or spam accounts, but then YouTube themselves tweeted saying, we're not quite sure why these subs have gone missing, give us a second. So yeah, huge numbers of subs have just like disappeared off the channel. So we're not over 200,000 anymore. We got up to like 205,000, and then I got up in the morning and we were down to 196. I thought, okay, either I've said something in a video that's really offended a lot of people, or YouTube's done the biggest purge imaginable. But it wasn't a purge, it was an accident. So apparently a load of legitimate subscribers who want to be subscribed have been unsubscribed against their wishes. So I've like put out like a tweet and a message on the subreddit saying, just double check you're still subscribed if you want to still be subscribed, because apparently you might not be anymore. Because I love YouTube. Everybody loves YouTube. It's wonderful to work with. But yeah, I'm going to be at EGX. I don't know if there's going to be... I feel like I'd be a bit like weirded out by it, Gavin. Not because I don't want to meet people. Like, after I was at the last EGX, I actually received my 100,000 subscriber plaque thing on stage from Google. There were a couple of people actually waiting for me. When I kind of came off the stage, you just kind of wanted to shake my hand, get an autograph or whatever. I was like, yeah, that's all absolutely fine. And at EGX Res this last year, like, you know, someone just actually came up to me and said, are you John from Miniature? And I said, yes. And I said, hello. And we chatted and talked about, you know, where he was going to go to university and like what he was studying and stuff. And it was lovely fun. In fact, I think actually that person actually listened to the Patroncast, because I swear that person actually said, hey, that was me a couple of months ago when I actually recorded that happened. So hello to you. It was lovely to meet you. So I don't mind like people coming up to me and like saying hello. I just feel like I feel like a bit weird, like actually setting up an event where I say, I shall be here. If you wish to bask in my munificence, then come to this place at this time. But I feel a bit weird. Maybe I'll just like tweet something out like at the day, like, you know, I'm here, and in the next hour I'm going to be just hanging out making some notes in the casual chill out area. Come and say hello. I'll be wearing a hat that's a Magikarp if you want to recognise me and you've never seen the video that's first on the channel that's got my face on it, because people forget that. So many people, you have no idea how many messages I get saying, hey John, for the next milestone video, how about a face reveal? Like, just go back. First video on the channel, just go and check. It's right there. But yeah, I do actually have a hat that's a Magikarp. It's my favourite hat. So I might just bring that along and put that on and go to the casual area and say, yeah, I'm going to be there for the next hour. If you want to come and say hello, that's fine, but I don't want to organise anything more formal than that. In fact, I like that plan. That's the plan now. Assassin's Creed Syndicate, will that ever be finished? To be honest, no. Sorry. It's kind of like Watch Dogs. That was like an earlier era of the channel when I was trying to run as close to a full-time channel with a video every day as I could, at the same time as running a full-time job, a normal job, with very long hours, and it was just, like, not feasible. And, like, just occasionally, like, if a series was doing quite badly, which is, like, not enough people were watching it, and, like, I wanted to put something on that more people were enjoying, that meant series just died. That wouldn't really happen today. Like, you know, I'd make sure these days series get proper endings. So, like, you know, Total War Warhammer. Well, Total War Warhammer was supposed to have a different ending, but when that ending died because my computer crashed, I just gave it a proper send-off anyway, because I wanted a series to have a proper ending. So now that wouldn't happen anymore. A series would have a proper ending, but no, Syndicate will not actually be continued. What do I think of Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild? Interesting question. Like, I'm unsure about it. Like, there's a couple of things I don't like. Like, it's far too early to tell because, like, you know, I've not seen enough of it. But the two things I'm unsure about are, I can forgive a game a lot of graphical problems if aesthetically it works. Like, if aesthetically it all holds together. And I feel like Zelda's like the opposite of that, which is graphically there's lots of bits that look just fine, but aesthetically it doesn't like it holds together to me. Like, the water's really realistic, but like like when you look at the horses and the valley that the horses are in, when Link was sneaking up behind a horse, like tame a horse, it looked like really cel shaded. But then you look at the buildings and they're kind of halfway between the two. And to me, it just looks like they look really weird when they're next to each other. Like, a horse ran through some water, and the water was really realistic. The horse was cel-shaded, and then the splashes with this stylized white stuff that was coming off the water, I just think it looked really, really bad. So when I can see, like, how individual assets look really pretty, I don't know if, for me, it holds together. The other thing that bothers me is, while I'm kind of glad that finally Nintendo's doing something, you know, interesting and new with Zelda, it kind of feels like it's a little bit out of date. Like, it feels like they've added in, like, hunting and crafting and cooking. And this is something that I've kind of got bored of in, say, games like Far Cry. Like, you know, I was really into it in Far Cry when there was, like, you know, the hunting and crafting and stuff in Far Cry 3, for example. Far Cry 3 and Far Cry 4. I was, like, really into that. But now I've kind of got bored of it. Like, when I play Far Cry Prime, it's like, no, this is boring now. I've kind of lost interest in it. It's been overdone. I now no longer have interest in hunting down a few wild pigs so I can make myself a new wallet, for example. And it feels like just at that point where I've reached exhaustion with that mechanic, Zelda's coming in saying, hey, we've got this fantastic new thing. It's hunting and crafting and cooking. Na 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 na. Oh, that noise is actually appropriate for once. I use that noise all the time in videos, or at least I've started doing it anyway. I quite like just doing the da-na-na-na noise when you find something. But it's actually appropriate for Zelda, because it's actually the Zelda noise. That's nice. Yeah, Zelda's finally kind of catching up with mechanics that I feel like I got bored with like a few years ago, because they've been in gaming for 10 years at this point. But that's just me. I don't know. My view is they haven't made a good Zelda game really since Wind Waker, to be honest. Like, you know, the glory days for me were Majora's Mask and Wind Waker, and Twilight Princess I didn't really enjoy, and Skyward Sword I just never really got into. Ocarina of Time is really good, but Ocarina of Time is also dated quite poorly, I think. I think Majora's Mask has aged a little bit better than Ocarina of Time, but I think Wind Waker is, to my mind, like the pinnacle of the series. I love Wind Waker. I think it still holds up very, very nicely today. The podcast. What's the origin of the podcast? How did I end up on a podcast with Dan and Matt? Dan asked me, which is kind of the entirety of my relationship with Dan, really. To this day, it's a bit of a mystery. He's like a mysterious benefactor, like a Miss Havisham to my Pip, which is like when the original GTA Online videos were happening. Like, my name was like, you know, put forward, but it was like, you know, nowhere near as upvoted as some of the others. But he approached me on Twitter saying, "Do you want to be involved in Heist?" And I was like, hell yes. But, you know, I played it cool. You know, I didn't reply for a couple of hours. And I was like, oh yeah, let me just check my calendar, but I should be able to do that. Kind of urgently messaging Claire saying, oh my god, it's happening. Claire, it's happening. I sent some really, really excited all cap messages to Claire while keeping my cool and sending Dan. So I'm like, oh yeah, I'm sure I'll be able to do that. That'd be really good fun. Messages to Dan while sending, you know, panicked all caps messages to Claire. It was brilliant. I think I've still got those messages somewhere. They're good. So yeah, I did that. And then he approached me about the podcasts. And again, I don't know why Dan has, like, you know, been so very kind and generous in getting me involved in the channel when our channel is like a tenth of the size of his, but he always has. And you know, I consider him a friend now. I consider Matt a very close friend. So, you know, I'm very glad I've met those guys, but I do not know exactly on what basis Dan decided to do the podcast and get me involved. The Steam sale, have I picked stuff I'm going to buy it? Yes, kind of, would not entirely. What I'll do is, like, when I've actually kind of decided exactly what I'm going to buy, I'll actually tweet, like, everything that I've bought together with the full price it was on Twitter, probably, because that's what I did last time there was a Steam sale. Like, the ones I probably get are Dust, Space Engineers, Dead Rising 2, and Fable Anniversary. I think those are all like £4 or £5 or less. I think Dust is £7, actually, which is probably a little bit higher than I would normally pay for it, but I kind of want to make a video on Dust. I've been wanting to make a video on Dust for a while. But yeah, I'll confirm on Twitter whenever I actually do that. What do I do in my free time? Someone asked. Well, I think you should all be very aware of that by now. In my free time, I moan about Brexit on Twitter. And after that, I don't really have any free time anymore. I just kind of go to bed after I'm done moaning about Brexit on Twitter. Or at least that's been my life for the last week. I actually read. I read quite a lot. Like, I go through periods of, like, wanting different things. Like, I'm not, like, a person who has, like, a perfect routine. I just kind of, like, get really into stuff at different times. So, like, recently I basically read a 3-part trilogy of fantasy novels by Robin Hobb, the Farseer trilogy. The Assassin's Apprentice, Assassin's Apprentice, King's Assassin, and Assassin's Quest. A 3-part trilogy, the Farseer trilogy by Robin Hobb. And, like, these were books that were, like, 800 pages each. So, like, you know, total of over 2,000 pages because the first one's a little bit shorter. And really small typeface. There was a lot of bloody words in there. And I just kind of inhaled all 3 of them in a matter of a few weeks, because I just got really into it and I just liked reading in all my spare moments. Like, at the moment, this exact moment, like, though I kind of joke about kind of moaning about Brexit on Twitter, I am spending a lot of time reading the news and, like, watching the news, because there's a lot of stuff that's in the air in the UK at the moment, and it kind of feels really important to know what the hell's going on. So I am actually spending a lot of time right now, like, reading the news and watching the news. Someone was asking, what's going to follow Fallout 4 No Guns? Well, that's an interesting question. It's not going to be more Fallout, because I felt like when there was 2 episodes of Survival, New Vegas, and Fallout 4 No Guns on in a single week, that was too much Fallout. 4 episodes of Fallout a week is too much. So it's not going to be Fallout on Saturday anymore. It could theoretically be Mass Effect 2. I don't know. I'm thinking about it. It could also potentially be Cities Skylines, which I'm also thinking about, because when I did SimCity 4, that did better than I had any right to expect it to. So those are 2 I've got in mind at the moment, but I haven't made a decision yet, and I'm not sure what I'll do when. Maybe I'll do Cities Skylines first, because I think that'll be a short series like SimCity 4 was, so maybe we'll do that. And finally, the most important question, well, not actually at all, but it just happened to be the one I came to last. Vera's dress. In Fallout New Vegas, You Only Live Once, I gave Vera's dress to Veronica, and then during the end sequence of Fallout New Vegas, You Only Live Once, when I was just kind of sitting on the balcony, I myself was wearing Vera's dress. Did I go and steal it back from Veronica even though I'd given it to her as a gift? No, I did not, because there are 2 Vera's dresses in Fallout New Vegas. You can take Vera's dress off her corpse in her bedroom, and then there is another identical copy of the dress in the wall safe by the elevator. So there are 2 copies of the dress in the game. I gave 1 to Veronica, and I kept 1 for myself, which I kept for myself the whole game, because I was planning to wear it all along. If I got to the end, I kind of wanted to be wearing that during the end sequence as a nice little fancy thing to wear. So yes, it was not me being horribly mean to Veronica, it was just that I gave 1 dress to her and kept 1 for me. So really, me and Veronica are BFF dress buddies. And so ends the Patroncast of hopefully June, hopefully. Obviously, if you have any follow-up questions, do put them down below. I will try and get back to you if I can with any further details. But yes, thank you all so very, very much, because you've just become even more important than you already were, because while kind of, yeah, the Google income itself, which was always a little bit unreliable, has potentially become even more wibbly at the moment. Yes, with Patreon being a static amount that is paid in US dollars, that just became even more important than it ever was. So thank you all so very, very much for keeping this crazy train on the rails, and I will see you all next month for the July Patroncast, which will happen in July, just as this one has hopefully happened in June. Thank you very much, and goodbye.